Hey guys, Sean here and welcome back to my YouTube channel. I hope you're all keeping well. It's a pleasure to have you with me today. I want to show you a few highlights, tips and tricks of my latest painting. This is actually 1 out of 7 paintings that I've been asked to create, and I want to document the entire process. So let's get stuck in. I'm going to be working on a 100cm by 100cm stretched canvas, and even though it comes triple primed with gesso, I like to add a thick layer myself, usually the night before, just for some added texture. I'm using acrylic paints and I mix Mars black, cobalt blue and titanium white with plenty of water just to cover the white of the canvas. In this paint mix I add a touch of yellow ochre to warm up the grey, and I'm working directly over a drippy wet surface with my trusty palette knife. I had a bit of white paint left over in this tube, and firing it onto the canvas was surprisingly fun. I can then simply blend that into the wet paint on the canvas with a large brush, as well as using my palette knife. I usually keep my paint mixes quite fluid for the beginning layers. My spray bottle is always at hand for this. I usually create many layers. I want to create depth and interest. Less is more. So for each painting I only use a few selective colours, and I vary the tones for each of these colours. I'm using a couple of different brushes to blend the wet paints for subtle variations and effects. Kitchen roll also has its uses too. And now here comes today's dominant colour. The paint underneath is dry, and I've barely used any water for this mix of thick yellow ochre and cadmium yellow. I lighten this mix up by adding white paints, and I can gently graze over the canvas to achieve a nice contrast. Now the thick parts of the paints are still quite tacky, so I don't want my next paint mix to interfere with what's already on the canvas. I'm mixing Mars black, cobalt blue and a touch of white for that cool grey, and that's already looking really nice on top of the yellow. Once the paint is dry, I go back over the canvas with yellow ochre, cadmium yellow and a touch of burnt umber. I also blend in between certain paint applications with a large brush. While the paint's wet, I add in some diluted burnt umber for some added interest. Once that's dry, I mix ultramarine blue, cobalt blue, Mars black and a touch of white, and I apply this using a variety of tools. I'll let this dark layer dry completely to avoid muddying up my colours before I add my next layer. Now I've got a nice muted and quite dull but dry area to work over, so let's get to work. I'm using the same mix of yellow ochre with a tiny bit of cadmium yellow, and I've changed the direction of my strokes just for some added interest and variation. I do the same with a lighter tone of yellow, then feather out some parts of the painting with a large dry brush. And now? That's right, I'm going to wait for this layer to dry. Now the painting is almost dry, I mix about 50-50 of cad yellow and yellow ochre, and I apply that over areas I want to brighten with my dominant colour. With a smaller palette knife, I mix cad yellow, titanium white and a touch of yellow ochre, and I can apply that over the wet paint. Another brilliant technique which I love doing is grazing the wet paint down with the edge of the knife. I'm now using almost pure titanium white, which I can gently add onto the wet paint to make it lighter right there on the canvas. After a touch of dry brushing and blending, I notice here that I want some more contrast in this particular area. So let's wait for the paint to dry. Again, I mix ultramarine blue, cobalt blue and black with a touch of white, and I adjust it accordingly. I want some of this colour to spill over into that yellow to create that eye-catching contrast. A small piece of kitchen roll works nicely for this effect, and not to mention my palette knife. I like to finish off by painting the sides. I usually choose black or white. My client suggested white for this piece. Whenever I paint an abstract, it never goes 100% to plan. I always have a basic idea before I start the painting. That includes a select colour choice. If I don't like parts of what I've created, then I can paint over it. And I like to leave those parts of that first attempt showing through slightly. I think that it gives the painting more depth and plenty of intricate information for the viewer. That's it for this video. Thank you all so much for watching. If you liked what you saw, then please subscribe to my channel and hit that little bell to be notified for when I upload my next video. I'll see you next time. Bye for now.